Welcome the Thrive Nation to, I think, one of the youngest health heroes in the world. And I've got a big suspicion that he's going to probably live to the age of 150 or maybe even beyond, because I think he started with ancestral wisdom principles from a young age, and he's learned a lot, and he's a health guru in terms of light, a light specialist, and he's walking the talk. He's got an incredible Instagram feed that I follow. I just started a podcast that I know of, that I've been listening to. Had a great podcast with Ben Greenfield. So I want to welcome the young but exceptionally well-informed Matt Maruca.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me on the show.
Cool, Matt. Well, you're gone across almost the globe or the States speaking about light. You're a light specialist. Just tell us a bit of the backstory in terms of your own health issues and how you overcame them.
Yeah, well, I was about 14 years old when I started struggling with a lot of health issues. And so that included gut issues, allergies, headaches, a lot of different challenges that were going on in my life at the time. And I ended up basically getting really bad acne breakouts. And so of all the other things I was facing, I just accepted them to be genetic and then thought that I couldn't do anything about them. But when I started getting acne breakouts, I was like, I can fix this. I must be able to change this. Because, you don't want to have that when you're in high school. You want to look good and get girls and all that stuff. So anyway, I started reading about the Paleo Diet, which I thought was really cool, because one of the things I started learning about was epigenetics and how we can actually change the genes that are expressed through our things that we do in our life. So the thing that they were focused on was food. So I started eating a healthier diet, and not only did my acne start getting better, but all these things I didn't think could be cured, gut issues, allergies, headaches, fatigue, all started improving. So I had this total flip of my life perspective that I thought, now I actually can heal my health. And all the doctors and people I saw before who weren't able to help me and they just gave me drugs, I realized that of course they weren't able to help, because they were just looking at drugs and healing these treating symptoms and not looking at a root cause. So anyway, eventually, after struggling with diet and trying to really use diet by itself to optimize my health, I learned about Dr. Jack Kruse, who you mentioned you have interviewed really recently, and people should go check out that interview. But basically, his work totally blew my mind and opened my perspectives to basically how light and our environment, beyond just our food, can impact our health in really tremendous ways. And so I spent, since then, the last 5 years now, learning more about that. I started a company providing blue light blocking glasses, kind of like the ones you're wearing, in order to help people protect themselves from blue light. And I don't use them, for example, like right now, because I have some windows open. So since I have the natural light coming in, I wouldn't be using them, even though I have my screen. I have this software called Iris that blocks out the vast majority of the blue light on a screen that you're probably familiar with as well. So anyhow, I started the company, traveled the world, spoke at some events, continue to research, and I've learned a lot of really interesting things about how what I now call the light diet, which is largely based on the principles that Dr. Kruse taught to me, how there's ways that it can go even deeper. And that's really what I'm focused on now, building the business, helping more people, sharing the message, learning more myself. And that's really the background story.
Great. So you went from sort of pain to purpose, for want of a better word, and you now have developed a company. Tell us about your company, what it does. I mean, it's some incredible frames, incredible lenses. Why is it different to any other blue blocking sort of company?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking. So first of all, I started Raw Optics because Luke Story, who's a podcaster you may be familiar with, who's a fashion stylist, was asking me how I got such high quality, good looking blue blocking glasses. And I had worked with a company specially to get these lenses and the frames, but it was a really challenging process to work with them because it wasn't something that was done normally. But because there was this new demand, I started creating blue blocking glasses on my own. And so I called my company Raw Optics after Ra, the Egyptian god of sunlight, who also happens to be the god of healing, medicine, and wellness from ancient Egypt, which says a lot given how the Egyptians were so connected to nature and they assigned so much meaning to the different gods. And so the fact that the sun god was also the god of medicine and healing says a lot about their knowledge that sunlight was really important for health. Basically, way back then they knew that. Anyway, optics is the science that studies light, essentially, and so that's raw optics is sort of a synonym for sunlight. So anyway, it's all about getting natural light and protecting ourselves from artificial light. So when this podcaster, Luke Story from the fashion world, was asking about these fashionable glasses, I decided that I would make them for him. I could actually take some frame that he already had and put in these really great quality lenses. And what we decided to do to be able to grow was just offer a fixed line of attractive frame styles that anyone can find something that looks good on them or really great. And then we combined it. This is the key, is that there were many companies making blue light glasses with nice frame styles. There's several companies out there with some pretty cool frame styles, but not with lenses that block the right wavelengths of light. So we were the first company to take the high quality frame styles and good looking, attractive options with the most effective lens technology to block the right wavelengths of blue light, which are the wavelengths that Dr. Kruse focuses on. So that is basically why raw optics is different. We're both fashionable and functional. And we've worked over the last 3 years now with leading experts in photobiology and the science of optics, of lenses and everything, in order to continue to dial in on what wavelengths of light need to be blocked and what's okay to pass through. And then we've worked with a leading lens developer in the world to basically optimize the proper balance of pigments, to use special types of pigments, like a specific type of pigment called melanin, which is found in our body, that's actually also used in our lenses in order to maximize the protection available from damaging wavelengths like blue light, but at the same time maximizing optimal color perception, color rendering, clarity of the lens, consistency of the lenses. And those are lenses we actually just started selling not very long ago. And so we're just always looking, just like, Apple releases a new iPhone every year. We're always looking to up level our glasses to the extent possible. And so that's really what makes our optics different, is just our commitment to quality. And we also guarantee satisfaction. So no matter what, when people have a problem, we're going to make it right. We have a 30-day period where people can try their frames, send them back, exchange them. But if anyone has a problem, we'll always make it right for them. So
brilliant.
Yeah.
Sounds like an incredible journey, and you're obviously looking to upskill yourself and improve your products. Well done. I think maybe after the show we can connect. I hit the number 35 on the Jamaican Apple Health and Wellness podcast list. So maybe I've got a few people out there in Jamaica. I don't know about America, but we are growing through the podcast over the last 8 months. And so it's been an incredible journey. And, we use blue blocks from Australia, Andy-Man stuff. I like it. These orange or red ones are from 400 to 550 nanometers. I know a little bit about the technology and where it's going, but, you always want to keep learning, keep growing, keep learning from other companies. Iron sharpens iron. As you guys rise up, Andy's a young guy as well, and developing these products is changing people's lives, because I'm totally convinced that light is more important than food, that your light diet is more important than your food diet. So, with your company, I wish you well, and maybe we can connect, and maybe I've got some fans, in the States or Jamaica or Europe that can get raw optics, much
absolutely.
easier than from Australia. We work with Sauna Space, a photobiomodulation infrared sauna company from a photobiomodulation point of view. They've got the near incandescent, EMF-free sauna, which has been brilliant for a lot of my clients and a lot of my patients, even in South Africa and beyond. So we'll connect afterwards, and I can hear a little bit more about raw optics. Biohacking in South Africa.
Yeah.
It's in its infancy.
And I want to say Andy and Blue Blocks in Australia, they also do a great job, to be honest. They're a really great company. We are always working on ways that we can be, advancing our technology as well. And the things that we're offering are things that they don't have. The special melanin pigments in our lenses, the quality of our frame styles, and so on. They have a lot of variety, different options. So people can go for what suits them best. But when it comes to the lens technology, ours are the most advanced in the world. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is Blue Blocks actually started doing the combination of the correct blocking after we started doing it. It's just interesting factoid. But again, they're doing a great job, and Andy's a great guy, like you said. So
yeah. Great.
yeah.
Well, that's how pioneers work. They keep on edging each other on to improve and get the best quality products out there, and then the public benefits from it. As I said, in South Africa, myself and my son go out at night with these orange or red lenses, and we're the only people that we've ever seen with these glasses. So, from a light perspective in South Africa, not many people know it at all, and trying to get out there is very difficult. That's why I had Dr. Jack Kruse on the podcast to talk about light, water, and magnetism. Hopefully, I'm going to interview Dr. Jay Montgomery as well, the ophthalmologist who did that incredible talk about light, because the more experts we can get to say, hang on, here's a neurosurgeon, here's an ophthalmologist, this is what they're saying about light. This is how it affects the eye. The eye is more than a camera, it's a clock. And on that point, tell us why sunlight, morning sunlight and the sunrise is so important.
Yeah. So basically, the way that I've come to understand it from my research and my personal experience is that our whole body runs like a clock, like a series of gears that all make up one ongoing clock. And so, unlike a clock that you set in your pocket or in a tower and it just starts to run, and maybe you have to adjust it once per year in case it goes off by a couple seconds or a minute. Unlike that kind of clock, our body clock is set every day. And so it's designed to be set in nature the way we evolved when we are exposed outdoors to full spectrum sunlight, which rises every morning in the same way and sets every evening in the same way. And whether you are living in the trees or you are living on the prairie or in the fields, or even if you're in a cave, unless you're deep in a cave, you're still getting the change in the light that happens throughout the day. Whereas when we live inside, there's a lot less natural light in our houses than just being outside. And one of the biggest issues is that our windows that let some of the light come in don't allow the proper spectrum, the full spectrum of light to pass through. They filter certain wavelengths like the infrared. They allow more of the blue light in, which creates these imbalances in the body. So basically, the thing that we need to do is just go outside to get the full intensity of the full spectrum of light. And this is what sets this clock. So getting morning sunlight, essentially, the best way to say it's important is because it controls every single cell in our body, all of the timing mechanisms that control our genetic expression, our metabolism, our energy production. All of these things are controlled by the light that's passing through our eyes and on our skin in the morning. So if we don't get this, then our body, even if we think we feel okay, at the deepest level, our body is facing some level of chaos, some level of imbalance, some level of circadian rhythm disruption if we're not exposed to morning sunlight. And when this happens chronically over time, people have sleep issues, all the issues that I had growing up, gut issues, allergies, headaches. You'll just feel really bad. And that's really the key, is if we're not getting this sunlight and we're spending our day indoors in artificial light, which also disrupts our circadian rhythm, just like not getting sunlight, getting artificial light instead of sunlight sends these mixed signals to our brain saying, basically, one, there's too much blue light and not enough of the healing red and infrared light in these artificial lights. And so therefore they become extremely stressful to the body because they're sending this signal from the blue light that's stimulating our hormonal systems in our brain and throughout the body, while at the same time not providing the infrared light, especially, that's really important and critical, I should say, for optimal energy production, optimal metabolic function. So it's a really nasty imbalance. And again, it's not just the artificial lights that are bad. It's also just not being exposed to sunlight throughout the day, which is so important for our body, and very few people are getting it. So it's totally a mess. And the solution is very easy. For people to just go outside and get this full spectrum of light is really, really nourishing to the body.
Great. Thank you for that summary. I think it's a good sort of basic understanding. But most people go outside into the sun, Matt, and they put sunglasses on. Now, tell me, what's the problem with wearing sunglasses when you go outside?
Yeah, it's phenomenal question. So sunglasses and sunscreen and contact lenses and regular glasses for seeing all also block the full spectrum of these light wavelengths. And so, again, because this system is so delicate, the system of how light passes through our eye and controls our hormones and neurotransmitters and so on, it's extremely delicate and sensitive. And we require, again, for optimal function, the full spectrum of all these wavelengths. That means when you put light through a sunglass or a glass or a contact lens or through sunscreen on your skin, we're no longer getting the full spectrum that we evolved with. And therefore, it's kind of like if you had a multivitamin and you took out certain vitamins. It's no longer a whole vitamin. Or even better would be if you're eating a healthy food, or a better example, I should say, is if you're eating some healthy food, but you intentionally extracted some of the key nutrients. And the whole premise, of course, is that sunlight, especially ultraviolet, is high energy and causes damage to our eyes and our skin. And just like anything in excess, pretty much, even water or oxygen, too much of it can cause really big problems. It just happens that because of the way we're living our life today, having too much water or oxygen is really hard to do. You would have to hyperventilate for a long time to get too much oxygen where it would really, really hurt you, and drink, more water than your body could possibly imagine. But with sunlight, it's actually one where it's easy to get too much because of the lifestyle we're living today. Again, not in normal circumstances, but because of the lifestyle we're living today, it's easy to get too much sunlight. And what I mean by that is that we have this natural protection mechanism called a tan, also known as a solar callus, as the experts call it, to protect us from excess sunlight. And so when we're exposed to the increase in sunlight in the springtime, like you're having down in South Africa now, our body starts to build up this natural solar callus or tan when we're out in the sun. And we have these systems where, our body basically tells us, okay, I want to have some sun. So you get some sun. And then it's okay, I've had enough. So you get some shade. And then as you build that up, you get a nice tan. And that's especially effective if you live in a place like Europe or you live in a place like Africa, wherever your ancestors evolved. If you live in that same place, then you're especially dialed in where it's going to be really hard to get sunburnt if you live this natural path. Now, if you're someone who's very white skinned like I am and you move south to somewhere like San Diego, where I live right now, or to Costa Rica, where I'll spend some time as well, or Mexico or anywhere like that, or South Africa even, then it could be a lot easier to get sunburnt. So, so I get a little sunburn sometimes. I'm not concerned about it because I understand from the research that excess UV light doesn't necessarily cause skin cancer anyway, the way that the standard belief systems say. I believe it has a lot more to do with chronically disrupted sleep, mitochondrial function, artificial light exposure, EMFs, and so on. But anyway, as far as why sunlight, the excess is an issue, is because yes, anything in excess is too much. And when we're living this indoor lifestyle, we're no longer getting that natural adaptation through the seasons, right? So people live indoors all morning. To your point about morning sunlight, we live indoors. We're staying inside all morning long, not getting healthy stimuli or stimulus from the morning light to get all of our hormones, neurotransmitters cranking, and to get our body prepared for the sunlight that would come later in the day. It's kind of like if you went off and you didn't train at all and you ran a marathon, like you could die. It's in the same sense. If we get up and we're indoors all day and then we go out in the midday sun and cook ourselves, our body isn't prepared. Whereas we get warmed up, so to speak, with morning sunlight exposure, it basically allows our skin to be preconditioned. Dr. Kruse has a great blog about this as well, where he gets into the deep scientific layers. But anyhow, so because everyone's living this lifestyle, you don't go outside in the morning sun and then people go out and cook themselves in the middle of the day, or they never get sun and then they go cook themselves on the weekend or on spring break or winter break. They go down to the Caribbean, to Jamaica, somewhere like that. They cook themselves for a week and then they don't get any more sun for the rest of the year. This isn't a really healthy way to engage with sunlight. It's kind of like going to, never really being in a healthy relationship, but just going to Las Vegas and spending a ton of money on prostitutes for a weekend and pretending like that balances out it, healthy and unhealthy relationships. It's really not, it doesn't work like that. So we need to have this consistent exposure to sun in the morning, in the afternoon, and a little bit in the midday is good, depending on one's tan status, skin type, and all these other factors. So really, that is very, very important point for people to know. So it's not just bad to wear sunglasses. It's bad to wear all the rest of the stuff. But the key is when we get too much sun, when we've gotten enough, when our skin starts to turn pink, put on a shirt, get in the shade, put on a hat, but don't cover your skin with these chemical screens that are very damaging. The only sunscreen I recommend is zinc oxide, which you can put just on the places that are most prone to getting burnt, like the nose and the face and maybe above the lips. On occasion, if you're going to be out, like if you're surfing like me in the middle of the day, I don't want to cover my whole body in sunscreen, but I might wear a t-shirt in the water and put some zinc oxide on my skin. And the reason this is good is because zinc doesn't absorb deep into our skin and into our bloodstream like all of the other chemical sunscreens do. And that's why it's the surfer's nose. It stays white, and you actually have to wipe it off when you're done. It's a mineral sunscreen, so it doesn't soak in. It just sits there and protects you, but you have to actually wipe it off when you're done. So that's the only thing I could get behind. And I couldn't get behind any types of sunglasses. And if you wear glasses or contacts, stop wearing contacts and start wearing glasses. And then when you go outside, this is another one of Dr. Kruse's pieces of advice, take them off. And so those are the key things for people to know about optimizing their light exposure.
Well said, Matt. Great summary, but I'm really concerned that ophthalmologists, doctors, they don't have this narrative at all. They see that UV is so damaging, and I mean, the eye allows, I think, 1 to 3% of UV light. There's UV photoreceptors in our eye that have received this very important light. How are we going to change this sort of narrative with these doctors and ophthalmologists and dermatologists with regards to how important the sun is? And I love what you said, it's dose dependent. If you drink 25 liters of water in a day, you're going to do damage. If you 23 hours in the wrong type of light, you're going to do damage. So it is dose dependent. But how are we going to change this narrative from medical doctors not believing that the sun is actually so good for one and so healthy for one, but causes more damage than anything else?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's kind of like one of those nonviolent protests like Gandhi or, all that kind of stuff. We really, I believe, just need to not try to change the system, and it will start to change as people like you and me and Dr. Kruse and Dr. Montgomery and a lot of other people like us start to share this information, live it more ourselves. The more that, we live this information, the more that I think other people are become attracted and interested in it. So for example, in my case, what I thought was really cool was that when I tried to convince people about the diets or the lifestyle things that I was doing for a long time, it didn't really work. No one was really interested. None of my friends or family. As soon as I stopped trying and I just said, I'm just going to focus on figuring out what works and applying it to myself, all of a sudden people started asking questions. Oh, what's this? What's that? What's the light diet? How did you impact your health? What do you do? And so that's when I started thinking, oh, wow, people don't just want these blue blocking glasses. They want a lot more than that. They want all the knowledge behind the company. They want all of the protocols, not just the one piece, the glasses. They want what I started to call the light diet, the full protocol of how can we optimize our light exposure on a daily basis. And so I think truly, I have no concern about changing these things. I used to be really concerned, like we had to fix this and fix that. And I thought that somehow fixing that stuff outside of me would fix the things inside of me, which it never would anyway. But so I think everyone focusing on fixing and healing, and not fixing so much as healing and growing ourselves, will help to change these paradigms outside of us. And the more we can all radiate, the more that people will just start to pick up on it. And in the same way, I now have a lot of confidence that I'm going to be able to change the paradigm single-handedly just by doing what I'm already doing now. I mean, I'm 21 now, 10 years. I've been doing this for 6 years, researching health and doing these things, 3 years on my business. I figure another 2 to 3 years, even 3 to 5 years, there'll be big changes if I just keep doing what I'm doing. And 10 years, I mean, forget about it. I think sunlight will be mainstream at that point. So honestly, it's a great question, but I just don't think we need to try to change the paradigms. I think they'll shift. One thing that will be necessary is, again, just it has to become cool. Just like Facebook and Instagram, whatever internet companies were, sometimes they said that'll never work. That's ridiculous. And it blew up because it became cool and it became adopted. Like if enough people start hearing about the science, oh, sunlight actually doesn't cause cancer unless you get way too much and you're eating toxic diet and you're living indoors all the time and wearing sunscreen and sunglasses, then it causes skin cancer. It could cause skin cancer if you do all those other things wrong. And that means that sun wasn't the cause anyway in those cases. It was the sunglasses or the sunscreen or the toxic diet. But nonetheless, people will realize that. And so I think there'll just be a mass movement that it changes things. Just like today, the governments and the authorities no longer have the power that they used to. Social media and the internet have taken that away. So it's like just us and people on the internet dominating this and, getting on, like I've been on podcasts with Ben Greenfield. I've interviewed him and, we're getting really close and he's a huge leader in the health world. He's starting to share this information more and more for many reasons. But one of them is that Dr. Kruse and I have, I think, increased his awareness of the subject. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to have a Thanksgiving dinner with him in a couple weeks here in the United States. And so we'll be spending time together, talking more, sort of masterminding, sharing ideas. And it's really, I think that's the way that things are going to start changing when all these mainstream people just start saying, listen, we're wrong about this.
Well, that's a lot of wisdom for a 21-year-old. Don't try and force the change, but be the change. And so well done to you. And obviously connecting with the right people. I mean, there's a lot of people that are quite activist, and I must say I get frustrated because there are a lot of sick people. And in my other life, not as a biohacker, but as a physician, I get to see a lot of sick people, and especially, Black South Africans have a very dark skin. And so maybe you can explain why the darker your skin is, the more sunlight you need.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. Well, so when we evolved on the equator, just as the basic, anthropology and evolutionary biology goes, we had much darker skin with much more melanin because in order to protect ourselves from the sun and to be able to assimilate the light optimally, we needed more melanin. If you had a white person in Ethiopia or Kenya or even South Africa, you could get totally fried in the summertime. The sun is so strong down there. And so that's how it was. We lost our hair, and this is another thing I learned from Dr. Kruse, but we lost our hair so that our skin could become a big solar panel. But we needed a lot of melanin to take that ultraviolet light and turn it into healing red and infrared light, which is what melanin does. It takes high energy UV light, which we need a little bit of, but it takes a lot of it, turns it into this healing red and infrared, which we can't really get enough of based on the data. You could do red light therapy all day long. I have actually 2 red light panels right here next to me, which I should totally turn on. And in fact, I'm going to, because they're right here. One moment. You just gave me a great idea.
Right.
Let's see if I can do these here. Yeah. So anyway, if it decides to work for me, it'll work, but it might not work right now. So anyway, there's no excess dose of this red and infrared light. And so that's why having the melanin in Africa was beneficial, and Indonesia and Southeast Asia and Australia and the Americas, where people have darker skin. But some people moved to other places further from the equator where there was a lot less sunlight. And so these people, some of them developed a beneficial adaptation, which basically comes from northern, West Asia. So the Caucasus, and that's basically now Georgia, Armenia. As far as we know, that's where the first white-skinned evolution occurred for people with lighter skin. And so, these people conquered throughout Europe, and these mutations and adaptations spread. And so then you have this whole continent in Europe where people have this lighter skin. And so therefore, people in Europe were more able to handle a lot less sunlight and still thrive and maintain optimal health. And so, that's really the difference. It's pretty easy for people to understand. We got this. It was a beneficial adaptation to have lighter skin. And so, in low sun areas. So basically, people who have this beneficial adaptation for low light areas are able to thrive in somewhere like Europe, whereas someone with much darker skin could have a problem because they're not able to make as much vitamin D. It takes 6 times as long to make the same amount of vitamin D from the lightest type of skin, like an Irish person, to the darkest type of skin, like someone from Ethiopia, for example. And so that's a really important consideration, considering how important vitamin D is for our health, but that's only one, like again, Dr. Kruse speaks of, one of hundreds and hundreds of things that the sun does for our body. And so that is basically why someone with darker skin is just evolutionarily designed to be in a stronger sun area. And they have huge benefit because they can take so much light and utilize it. So we all have these adaptations for where our ancestors evolved. Conversely, there's the drawback, just like there's a drawback if someone with really dark skin goes somewhere that doesn't have a lot of sun, like, for example, Europe or North America. If you take someone with really light skin and put them on the equator, you're going to get burnt if you didn't have a lot of shelter or somewhere to basically be in the shade throughout the day. You would get fried. You wouldn't be able to survive like someone with darker skin would hunting and think, I would get probably too hot from being there. And so when I go to Costa Rica or somewhere tropical, I want to spend a lot of time in the water, a lot of time inside. And I would not be able to necessarily achieve the level of physical success or exertion that someone from Kenya or from that area could.
Absolutely, well said. And I've got this Greek Cypriot skin, and you can see I spend a lot of time in the sun. I get as much sun as I can. I go out there. We're at about 2,500 feet here in Johannesburg. We're the 26th degree latitude, so we probably get about 80% sun days throughout the year. And our UV index is probably sitting often 10, 12, 14. So it's a really, really good place, to get sunlight. I'm concerned about, our sort of, our colleagues, that are got black skins, very dark skins. They're spending a lot of time indoor. They're not getting outside because they're told that the sun's bad and they don't enjoy the sun. And we're seeing rock bottom vitamin D levels. But not only that, as you've mentioned, all the respiratory proteins, the different parts of the mitochondria that we might get into at a later stage are photoreceptors. And that's really important for mitochondrial function and obviously preventing a lot of these chronic diseases that have affected people. But thanks for that summary on sunglasses, on sunlight. Tell us a little bit about your daily routine, how important it is with regards to, light, what type of biohacks you do. You've been around, you've met some incredible people like Luke Story and Ben Greenfield. How does the day of Matt Maruca start?
Yes, thank you for asking. So right now I have a girlfriend, so the day starts sometimes in bed and just engaging in certain different areas of the light diet, such as like healthy sex and that kind of thing. But besides that, if I'm by myself, always, and even with my girlfriend, what I'll do is I'll go out and we'll get in the sun. She loves the sun, which is great. Even though she didn't know about all this health related stuff, it was just intuitive. So we go out in the sun, we'll lay in the sun, we'll watch the sunrise on a clear day. We will eat a healthy we'll eat a really good breakfast. Usually what I eat is caviar for omega-3s. I just as a supplement, I eat caviar every morning. I eat, I drink some cilantro mixed with water and salt, like basically as a juice, blend it up, to keep getting mercury out of my body, because I've been eating predator seafood for a long time. So my mercury levels got too high because to be honest, I wasn't taking Dr. Kruse's advice fully. I was eating seafood like he recommends, but I was chronically traveling and disrupting my circadian rhythm that way, which prevented my body from being able to properly detoxify. So I actually ended up with a nasty mercury level as a result of not taking care of myself in the way that I should, not practicing what I preached in a certain respect. So that was a good kick in the butt. But using cilantro juice is a natural way to kick that out. And same with, there's other supplements, but that one works really well. Spending time in the ocean works well. So anyway, I have the caviar, cilantro juice, and bone broth. And I make bone broth with extra collagen protein powder, coconut oil, apple cider vinegar, sea salt, black pepper, turmeric, a bunch of things that just make it taste amazing and really healthy. And and L-glutamine powder. And that becomes, I blend it up and it becomes really frothy and delicious and creamy. So those are like my three main supplements that are pretty much whole foods. Then I take some other supplements just as part of a protocol I'm testing out with one of Dr. Kruse's medical students, who's a mentee of his, just things like curcumin, resveratrol, quercetin, a couple things like this to help me dial in different things I'm looking to test and improve and biohack. But what really matters is like the real food that I'll have is going to be besides the caviar, bone broth, and cilantro juice, I'm going to have whether it's some meat or maybe some leftover fish. I usually prefer meat in the morning, or eggs, a bunch of vegetables. But I try to keep it not too heavy. I try to eat a good amount of protein to set my circadian rhythm. Again, that's something Dr. Kruse focuses on heavily, is getting a higher protein breakfast, 30 to 50 grams, to really stimulate our circadian rhythm. But besides that, I try to keep it pretty basic, simple. And for me, what I say is simple actually seems complicated to a lot of people, but for me, it's not. So then what I'll do is I'll go get in the ocean after I have like 15, 20 minutes for my food to kind of digest and process a little bit. I'll get in the water. The ocean here in California is very cold right now. It's like about 59 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 15 degrees Celsius. So it's cold, but it feels great. It's like the perfect temperature for a really good ice, like almost like an ice bath or a cold plunge. So I stay in there. I'll again be in the sun. And since I'm working on my business, I try to find the best balance of getting in the ocean and then working outside. And when I get in the water, I can actually stay in the sunlight for a longer period of time working without getting too hot. So I'll do that. And then I'll go in the shade once I've had a lot of sun for the morning, and I'll work for a couple more hours. And then usually I'll get back in the sun in the afternoon and stay in it until sunset, ideally. And maybe have one small snack in the middle of the day, although I usually try not to snack much. But usually that will be my last meal, will be like some kind of snack in the early afternoon, like aka just a smaller meal. Sometimes I'll have another meal, but the big key thing is that not eating late. I don't want to eat I want to go to bed within 3 to 4 hours tops of sunset. So right now it sunsets here because we had daylight savings, which is a total mess here in the United States. We had that happen. So basically now the sun sets, it used to set at 6 p.m. Now it sets at 5 p.m. since this weekend. So I try to go to bed by 9 at the latest my time. So I don't want to be eating anything after basically 5 p.m. I want my food to be fully digested, or even after 4 p.m. So yeah, that's pretty much my daily routine. The one thing I didn't mention, a couple things I didn't mention, is I'm working on building more and more meditation into my routine. And it's just a matter of, if I'm with my girlfriend, just kind of working that in there whenever I can. Sometimes being in the sun is a great opportunity to meditate, actually, while sunbathing, just being present there. It's so powerful. And those are really the main things that I'm doing in a daily basis.
Wow. Getting a lot of protein and fats in the morning. Kruse speaks a lot about that, how important it is. If you're going to have carbohydrates, have it at like a high UV index in the middle of the day. I think that's important as well. A lot of you're getting in the sea, which is incredible from a grounding perspective, on the sand. At 21 years old, it seems like you're going to be living for a long time. You've got incredible purpose in building this company. Well done. You are walking the talk, and obviously you're watching your levels. If mercury picks up, and you've got some real key people around you, so well done to you. Tell us how important it is not to eat at night under artificial light at night, or ALAN. How important it is, not to eat, when the sun has gone down. I find that very difficult. I've got a family, 2 children. Our meal that we share together, and I know Ben Greenfield's mentioned this, that they eat together around the table, which is important. But what does, eating when the sun's gone down at night actually do to your circadian rhythm and to your sort of biological systems?
Yeah, so there is a disruption that happens because when we consume food in the evening, our body is still going to be trying to burn through it. But if you think about food like fuel, why would you want to have the majority of your fuel for the day at the end of the day? You're just going to store it on as fat and start gaining weight. Whereas if you put your fuel in the beginning of the day, you're going to actually burn through it and use it, and not be storing it on as fat, and not be disrupting your sleep because your body's trying to metabolize it while you sleep. Because food does it, it takes 4 hours approximately to digest, depending on the type of food. It could be even longer. The body might take up to 7 or 8 hours to be fully cleared out. So I tell people, like, minimum 3 to 4 hours before bed, you want to have your last food completed. And I don't follow this every day of the week. I probably stick with this probably about 4 to 5 days of the week. And then the other days of the week, I might eat a little bit later. But very rarely will I engage in like a midnight snack or anything like that. It's just something I pretty much never do. It might just be that I eat my dinner a little later, like sometimes I'm with a party of people and we're not done eating till 8 o'clock in the evening, which is right before I want to go to bed, but maybe I'll be up a little later that night. So, it doesn't have to be perfect, but in general, the Europeans, I think, are a great example to look at, and a lot of other cultures in the world. But they generally, when I lived in Europe on an exchange program in high school, in the morning there would be a nice, hearty breakfast to get the day started. But then around 3 or 4 hours later, around 1:12 or 1 or 2 in the afternoon, we would eat lunch, but basically dinner. We would eat dinner in the middle of the day. It'd be a great hearty meal, especially on a Sunday. And then in the evening, around 4 or 5 or 6, we would have, maybe they'd have a snack in the afternoon. Again, I try not to snack so much. 4 or 5 or 6 in the evening, maybe 7 even, they'd have a little, some bites, some leftovers, something. So even though it's not convenient based on the society and the way we're living today, biologically, the ideal way is to stick to the European model, which is eating a bigger dinner in the middle of the day and eating like a smaller supper in the evening. But, I've had dinner at Ben Greenfield's house with him and his wife and his kids, and it's a really healing, high energy time to be around a family and community and the love. So I didn't mention this, but I sort of alluded to the fact that I'm working on doing more and more meditation practices. There's a guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza you may be familiar with,
Absolutely.
and he's basically flipping the paradigm when it comes to how beliefs affect our biology and our body, just like Bruce Lipton as well. There's a lot of people like this, but Dr. Dispenza is my favorite, to be honest. He explains how just changing our beliefs, having this, intentionally cultivating love and energy and positivity by taking the time to meditate and work out limiting beliefs and thought patterns is so powerful for helping people to heal. And it makes sense from the perspective of the light diet, because even Dr. Kruse has discussed this, and there's great research behind this. When we're stressed, whether it's chemical stress or biological stress or light stress or emotional stress, which is a big one for most people, emotional stress and false belief systems and trauma, that's like one of the biggest stresses for everyone, for almost everyone. So by taking time to sit with our thought patterns, like Joe Dispenza recommends, aka meditating, and see what's running, we can identify those false belief systems, start to weed them out, which is a process I've really started to try to focus more and more on. Because previously I was only focused, just like in the beginning, it was just my, doctors were giving a drug or this or that. Then it was diet. Then it was sunlight and focusing just on sunlight and light. And it's very important, and it helped a lot. Each of these things helped, in their own way, whether by actually helping or by teaching a lesson. But now the understanding I've come to is that, and this is where the light diet can be really expanded, is when we can get rid of these false limiting belief systems through the kind of work that Joe Dispenza focuses on, we can really start to excel. And a lot of people, you've probably heard these stories, a lot of people can do the work, as Joe Dispenza calls it, get rid of their limiting belief systems and overcome tremendous health issues without changing anything else. So that just shows just how powerful that is. On top of all the other stuff we're talking about, it's, I think, a recipe for great success for people.
And I think it's got to do, obviously, with, electrons and protons and neutrons, because those beliefs have a field. They're a biomagnetic field, just like the sun is a field. It's an electromagnetic part of the spectrum. And so that's obviously very, very important. And I think, looking at yourself with that purpose of, changing people's lives through the correct light diet is a very important biomagnetic field that you carry that I think just almost illuminates, your own cells. And I'm convinced that the more light you filled in with from an emotional, spiritual point of view, the more that affects your mitochondria on those different respiratory proteins, on those, photo, receptors. It's the light from the sun, but it's the light within. Even when I spoke to Dr. Kruse on the podcast, he said, most religions are talking about the light within you. Christ said he's the light of the world. So there's obviously this light and how it affects this internal light, this love that affects ourselves as well as the external light. That's really, really important. But let's talk about another sort of the non-native electromagnetic field. Luke's story's been, quite heavily involved in terms of EMFs and the effect on us. Another, area that's causing a lot of damage. Even if you've got the right light diet, one has to be really aware of the electromagnetic radiation. And I spent some time in Australia becoming a geobiologist and, being able to assess most of these waves, electrical waves, electromagnetic fields, your RF, and just to give us the grounding here in South Africa, doing a lot of home assessments here. Tell me how important electromagnetic radiation is and how damaging this non-native electromagnetic fields are.
Yeah, that's a subject that especially earlier on when I was doing this research, I spent a lot of time reading about EMFs and electromagnetic fields. And basically what I came to learn is that the people who first studied these things found constant damaging effects from excess exposure to these fields. And they don't even own cell phones, these people who were first researching these things, because of they saw the results firsthand. Now, today, on the other hand, we are basically using unlimited amounts of EMF in every way for communication, because due to what was happening in the world at the time, the Navy in the United States of America was using radar for fighting the Cold War and so on and so on. So basically, they had to hide this information when they were, even paying scientists to research it and then hiding the research. So the data is unshakable in how many studies have been done and how much research has been done on how EMF affects the cells. The mechanisms aren't my expertise, although of course it affects the calcium channels in our cells in a really negative way, which causes a chronic stress response. The data has linked these frequencies, whether it's Bluetooth, Wi-Fi cell signals, cell phones, electric wiring, electrical appliances, electrical and magnetic fields. They've all been linked to things like cancer, diabetes, basically cataracts. All the diseases linked to mitochondrial damage are related to these fields and exposure to them. And so I highly advise people, from what I've learned, to keep their phone on airplane mode when it's in their pocket. That's what I do. I turn my Wi-Fi off while I sleep. In fact, I don't use Wi-Fi almost at all. Right now I'm in an Airbnb because I'm kind of like traveling a bit at the moment. So I am using Wi-Fi right now to make sure we have good signal for this podcast. But in general, I have an Ethernet cable plugged into my computer. I have a phone hotspot that I use, but I don't use it wirelessly. I actually use a USB cable to connect my phone to my computer. And I put the phone as far away as the cable goes, which is about 3 meters. So my phone is emitting, but my computer Wi-Fi is off. And so it's actually relatively harmless. I use an external keyboard most of the time on my computer so that I don't even have to put my wrists above the laptop area, because the magnetic field is very strong. And these are all things I've just learned from different people who are experts in the field, and friends who are electrosensitive telling me, oh, you can't do that. That's such a bad, you might not feel it now, but eventually you'll have tingling in your wrists if if it's possible you could, basically, and so I don't want to be exposing myself to the unnecessary exposure. The mitigation strategies are easy. The only mitigation strategy that can be hard is if you have a really great community or people you really love in one area, and yet the area is getting bombarded with EMF. Sometimes Dr. Kruse will recommend to people get out of the city, move away, go somewhere where you're in nature, in the countryside, in the middle of nowhere, which is something I was listening to for a long time. So I kind of spent like 3 years traveling and almost running away from big cities and all the places where all the young people and all my peers are actually hanging out at colleges and all this stuff. And I didn't go to college. I went from high school to just focusing on my business. So I'm working on finding the happiest medium, best balance between maximally taking care of my health and still living in an area where there could be more EMFs. Like right now, where I'm in the suburbs of San Diego on the coast, there's more EMF than I would love, but it's not horrible. But again, Dr. Kruse and certain other people are contending that 5G is already being built and tested in these areas. And so in that case, those, 4G and 3G are already bad enough. Getting up to the 5G wavelengths is just a nightmare. And so I really would not want to, I wouldn't subject myself to that. And so that's when I would just say, you know what, even if there's a great community, it's not worth trading my health. So I'm going to go and live in Costa Rica or Mexico or somewhere off the grid and thankfully I have the ability to do that because of my business that I built. I highly encourage people looking into building a remote online business, whether it's coaching, content, product business, service business. But that's a great opportunity for people. But there's always ways to make things work, and when times call for things, if someone had to live off their savings for a year, I bet anyone who went to live in the tropics and live off their savings for a year or live in a more remote area would be able to figure out a business opportunity, because when you set your mind to something for 6 months or a year, I really believe that anyone can accomplish almost anything.
Sounds incredible. Obviously, finding the balance for you. You've been able to travel, move around, build your business, meet some incredible people that are involved in health, and then keep your business online, which allows you then not to get enslaved to the different systems. Governments enslaved to financial institutions. That's how they keep you chained up, or enslaved to big pharma, or enslaved to big hospitals. There's always this enslavement. They really just want to try and drain you and keep you locked in. And I see that a lot of people are saying, no, we're going to sort of provide for ourselves, look after our own health, empower ourselves, get off the grid. There's quite a big movement here to use either solar or to develop your own electricity, get your own water, and not be really enslaved to financial institutions. People are sort of becoming more minimalistic because they don't want to be controlled by government anymore. So, I think that's the way of the future.
Yeah, I fully agree. And it's interesting in the United States too, today's election day. So there'll be a new president determined by tonight, probably, whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden. So that's an interesting thing for the direction of the world, because obviously the United States kind of directs a lot of things worldwide.
Absolutely.
But so it's been really great chatting with you. Are there any other kind of closing questions you'd like to get into?
Yeah, look, I think give us your top 3 biohacks other than light. I think you've, and I've got one more question after that, but what are your top 3 biohacks?
Yeah. So I honestly don't use the term biohack so much, even though it has a good place, but really just getting back to a lifestyle that is healthy and calming and natural is, I think, really great. Like, I don't want to be someone who's going on podcasts contributing to the noise and the overwhelm in people's lives. I want to be able to be helping people to just reconnect to these natural truths. So even though there's all this information about EMFs and light and food and all this stuff, at the end of the day, I really do believe that taking care of our mindset is really important. So I would say that's a first biohack, like really just caring for our field, our belief systems, like you said. And that's something where Dr. Joe Dispenza is a really great resource people can look into. There's plenty of other experts out there, but he is one who, in his 9-week course, which is $300, really does a great job outlining the science in a very short period of time. So for me, that's first biohack, taking care of our inner light in that way. The second would be, spending time with community and being around people who are positive. And for me, the third one, which I think is equally as valuable as community, or even more valuable, is really linking up with some sort of passion, something that really motivates you. Whether for some people it might be a person, it might be their girlfriend, or it might be a relationship that inspires them. For some people it might be surfing or fishing or skiing or running. For me, it's learning, and and it's not better or worse to be interested in learning or running or any of these other things, but it's just having that as something that lights your fire up every day. And that's something that I actually only really learned again recently, because I had this drive and passion and everything that was pulling me towards towards just fascination. And then when I got into my business, I sort of let the day-to-day challenges overtake my passion. And so really, now that I've started to build a team, a really competent team, I'm very, very happy, because I'm starting to be able to spend more time back in my area of fun and of most skill is in researching and learning and sharing and teaching. So those are my top hacks.
Fantastic. Last question. If you have to, what's your most gifted book? If you had to look at a couple of books possibly that have sort of impacted you the most, what would you recommend?
Yeah, The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, hands down, is the best. That can help people. I mean, there's other books that are great about health, like Dr. Kruse's Epi-Paleo Prescription, although I like his blog and his podcasts even more than that book. But yeah, the 4-hour work week, as far as being able to separate yourself from, the 9 to 5 and be able to start one's own business, that's the best piece of inspiration as far as a book goes. As far as then ideation from the inspiration, the best book is called The Lean Startup. And then the best execution is a business program that I'm doing called Sharfen. It's CHARFEN. And this is not a book, but it's a business program. And that's gold, what I just shared. I wouldn't normally share that on a podcast, but that's something that anyone could use, those 3 steps to get inspired, to figure out how to figure out what the idea is, and then to execute on a business idea with this business program. So yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for your time, Matt. I know sort of being on a computer screen is for both of us something as sort of a bittersweet, because we do want to, empower and educate people by getting this out on obviously the different channels. But where can people find you? How can they connect with you? And how can they connect with Raw Optics?
Thanks for asking. So people can basically reach out to us on Instagram. That's RA_optics. And then people can find me at The Light Diet on Instagram as well. People can go to rawoptics.com to order glasses, and people can, that's really great. And check out the Light Diet podcast that I just launched as well. We're really going to be building that whole process out in the next couple of months. So that'll be great. We'll have a Light Diet course coming out not too far down the road as well, a video course, probably a free course that anyone could have access to, just to have the information out there. That's really all the good stuff. Yeah.
Incredible. Well done. Incredible calling. Matt Maruca, 21 years old, hitting it up the park from a health and wellness and performance. To my athletes out there and those that listen and give me feedback, if you want to maximize your performance and maximize your light. And just remember, I often listen to Dr. Kruse on his podcast, that Usain Bolt, before he broke records, before he won races, was eating chicken McNuggets and sort of Big Macs. Not that I advocate junk food, but it just showed how important the light is to his performance. And he lives, at a sort of very equatorial, has a very dark skin, gets a lot of sunlight. So your light is more important than your diet. Thank you so much, Matt Maruca. We'll put all those links in the show notes, and take care of yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate it. It's been great chatting with you.